Hey guys, it's Syama Maher here, CEO of Scaling Retail. And gosh, it is beautiful out here today in California. It's such a beautiful time to be out enjoying the sun. I know it's kind of rainy and not so beautiful in New York, but gosh, is it beautiful in California? It's interesting. We were having a conversation internally yesterday, and this really cool article came up on audience building, and I thought it was an interesting perspective to share, and I wanted to offer some insights on it. As many business owners today are looking at how to launch their businesses in ways that are profitable and scalable, sometimes we're told to build an audience while we are kind of getting ready to launch, or we're kind of looking at how we are incorporating our values and our ethos versus, let's just say a mass market product or brand that we're just trying to have high volume and high transactions against. And both of those ways of doing business, I think, are valid. In fact, I think sometimes we forget that a lot of businesses can be very successful by selling high volume that don't really have brands associated, right? When we think about disruptive products in the industry, they don't always have brand, but maybe they have some discrete functionality, right? And then it becomes a brand over time. Think about Kleenex, right? Like now when I say Kleenex, everyone knows that I mean a tissue, and there's a brand around that. But when it launched, right, it's like, what was the association? How did we know that Kleenex would become the global word here for a tissue, right? It's pretty funny. But what's interesting here is kind of when we start to think about, audience building, there are a lot of different components to building an audience, and some I think are more time consuming and have higher payoffs, and other I think have lower payoffs. And so I wanted to kind of go over that. There's an interesting phenomenon where people are thinking a lot about crowdfunding still for their businesses, and they're thinking that they're going to be able to build a list, convert the list into pre-sales, and then take those pre-sales and fuel the production and the growth of their business. Now, that kind of philosophy or strategy around business building is good, but it takes a lot of work and energy and effort that I don't think many entrepreneurs kind of go into this process understanding. And what does that mean? Well, putting up a landing page isn't quite as simple as just putting up an image and putting a newsletter button on there. Certainly it's part of the process, but it's not the entire process. And so when we think about what it means to build an audience, that really means kind of coming from the ground up and saying, what do I stand for? What's the foundation of my brand? What is it that I'm positioning myself for? How do I communicate that? And then how does audience building become part of a longer term strategy, knowing that the conversion portion of that is going to happen a lot further down the road? So what does that mean? That means you don't put up a landing page and just put a bunch of ads to it and assume that in 3 months you're going to have a list built enough that's going to convert into $1 million launch, right? Certainly without putting, let's say, $2 million into raising that kind of newsletter awareness. So when you start to ask yourself about, the long-term customer-facing brand building landscape, I'd like everyone to consider the notion that yes, consumers are not going to, when I say consumers, I mean Gen Zs, millennials, what the brand is and how they communicate and what it stands for is extremely important. Both in terms of the early onset launching phases, as well as kind of continuing conversations. Any brand out there that has been tone deaf to what's happening in terms of, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is simply a brand that's going to lose a lot of market share when it comes to being popularized and highly trafficked on, Instagram, and getting that word of mouth and creating that brand recognition and brand story. However, guys, there are still going to be lots of brands out there that are loss leaders and that are going to do a tremendous amount of volume that may not necessarily have this big, beautiful brand story, but because of the way in which they've chosen their language and because of the way in which they've marketed and positioned themselves to be very niche, can also do a tremendous amount of volume and also gain brand loyalty because of the utility of the product. Right now at Scaling Retail, we're brand builders, right? We're big fans of storytelling and creating emotional connection. We are marketers. We build business models that facilitate brand visions and that are customer friendly. So you're basically in that trifecta between the founder and the CEO's vision, the market viability. So is someone actually going to buy it? That's super important. And then kind of looking at the resources and the strategy that kind of get to this kind of triangle. That's how we approach it, right? We don't believe that you just, build whatever the founder or CEOs want, because obviously that may not be substantiated. So that's the approach that we take. So we're very much in the, we love the brand narrative and the brand story. However, lately, as we've been dipping our toes into other kinds of commodity driven products, I think it's really important to realize that volume and scale can also happen in a way that is not filled with Instagram lives, and that is not filled with emotional storytelling. And I think it goes both ways. And I think that it's important to understand that just like we talk about, how apples are, apples and oranges are very different, they're also very similar, right? They are also very similar. And so in that vein, guys, as you're looking at kind of building your next brand or your next product, I would say, let's stop and take a look and realize, what is the actual intent of your business? I had a conversation with someone this morning. We were talking about, is your goal here to leverage your business for power and influence, which is totally fine. Or is it to think of it as a serial entrepreneur and to actually have multiple businesses and to be considering your cash flow and your business strategy more like a VC? Also totally valid, right? Both are valid. And the exercise that I asked her to do was to tell me everything you want to get out of your business in the next 5 years, right? And write that down. When you shut your business down in 5 years, what would it be that you would like to say you would have gotten out of this experience? And what will it have propelled you forward to do? And so I know it starts to sound a little bit life coachy, but really it's like business coachy in the sense that if you don't know what you're trying to get out of this and you don't know where you're heading, I can't build the engine to help you get there. And that kind of clarity and purpose and definition is something that you need to be specific on, right? Is it that this is one of multiple businesses? Is it that this is one of, my only business and I want to write it so I can build this kind of big, beautiful brand and keep it for forever and maybe have an offshoot, but I'm not in it for the, strategic business building component. And again, neither one is good or bad, but if you don't know where you're going, you can't, it's like people hire us. It's like hiring the hammer to swat a fly, right? like if it's a fly, then like, go get a fly swatter, if your problems are very simple, which is okay, how do I, do this small thing or that small thing? Check out our YouTube videos or talk to people who are focused on servicing hobbyists, right? But for us, what's really mission critical is, the people who choose to work with us are driven by a vision, either that they have for themselves when they first talk to us or that they've uncovered through working together, that then kind of propels all of the energy forward. And if you don't have the vision, right, it's like, how will you know what the hell success is? How will you know when you've actually done the thing, right? And I'm not saying in 5 years you want an email open rate of 25%, right? I'm talking about okay, in 5 years, I want to sell this business. I want to reinvest the money, or in 5 years, I want this brand to be influential. And again, it can be a combination of things, but something has got to be motivating you and driving you. And without that kind of motivation and drive, guys, you're going to be spending money, spending time, kind of going in these different directions. You're going to hear one person who's going to be and you're going to be oh yeah, that sounds really good. Maybe I'll do that. Oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Maybe I'll incorporate that thing. Look, a lot of people have really great advice. We have a plethora in this industry of people who are sharing content. Whatever it is you're seeking to find, you will find, right? So that is for sure. However, you won't know if something is a good fit for you unless you know where you're going, right? You won't know if that strategy is bullshit or if it's actually worth your time unless you know the direction you're heading into and what the ultimate goal is. So, hardest things in life are to pick a path and pick a direction. And once you know what the end goal is, guys, it's really just reverse engineering. And that's where I think life becomes a lot simpler. Know where you want to be and then hire the right people to make it happen. Okay, that's all for me on this update, guys. Not a lot happening in terms of industry. You know, I'm sure you guys have all been keeping up with everything that's going on Business of Fashion. I was just reading the other day all the bankruptcies of all the big industries. So wild, so insane to see so many businesses shut their doors. Also then spoke to someone on the phone who was like, yeah, mortgage rates are really low and it's a good time to buy. So when it comes to how you guys are perceiving the market and looking at opportunity, I would also urge you, I think I might have cut out, but in the same vein that I would ask you guys to think of your lives in terms of 5 years from now, I would also urge you and encourage you to be thinking about how, you know, you are going to be pivoting and making strategic decisions now that are going to support the bigger version of you, right? Because there is just a tremendous amount of opportunity right now. And I really want to emphasize that. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.